Welcome to Tell Me More, the all-steel podcast where design meets innovation and we explore the limitless potential of workspaces. In this exclusive series, we're peeling back the layers of workplace design. From the psychology of colors to the future of hybrid work, join us as we open doors to conversations with industry leaders, architects, and designers who redefine the modern workplace. This is Tell Me More, brought to you by Allsteel, because when it comes to designing the future, there's always more to discover.
Hello, welcome to the Tell Me More podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is the third episode in our mini-series about ergonomics. My name is Dr. Lauren Gant, and I am a Senior Workplace Advisory Manager with Allsteel. I am a certified professional ergonomist, a WELL AP, and I have a doctorate in biomedical engineering with an emphasis in biomechanics and ergonomics. So this is an area that I'm not only very passionate about, but I'm also qualified to be giving advice in this area. My goal with today's podcast is to empower you and to invite you to create ergonomic working postures and environments. And to that end, we are doing a solo episode of the podcast today. I want to talk to you a little bit about how I define ergonomics, and then I'm going to talk with you. I'm going to talk you through an ergonomic adjustment. My hope is that you can use this podcast as you work to create more comfortable, healthy, and productive workspaces. So, what is ergonomics? When I hear people talk about ergonomics, I have the perception that an image maybe pops into their head, this schematic of a person sitting in a very rigid and precise posture, staring at a computer screen with lots of specified angles and measurements. And posture is important, and we're going to be talking about posture. But I tend to take a much more holistic view, a broader view of what ergonomics is. My favorite way to define ergonomics is the study of the interaction between the human and their work environment. And ultimately, I want to use that information to create these healthy, comfortable, and productive spaces. So posture is important, but I want you to also think about things that may impact you throughout the day. For example, your work tasks. What tools and technology are you working with? And where are you working from? Who are you working with? For example, you might be doing quite a bit of work from the car and with your phone, and others might be very tied to their desks. What is your psychosocial state? So these are considerations regarding your mental state as it relates to your work. So how stressed are you? Do you feel supported by your manager? Do you have a work friend? When your mental state is not ideal, it can manifest itself as discomfort or even awkward postures. I also want you to think about individual differences. We all come in different shapes and sizes, but we also come to work with other differences. For example, visual capabilities or attention capabilities, or even how we process the world, this idea of neurodiversity. And finally, we need to think a little bit beyond our immediate work desk and work chair to the greater environment. What is the temperature and lighting like? What is the noise in your environment? And how can these things impact your work and how comfortable you are doing it? So from this definition, from this perspective, I hope you can understand that it's really impossible and really maybe even unhelpful for me to give you a prescriptive or one-size-fits-all solution. Instead, what I'm going to do is to introduce some best practices that work for most. I'm going to invite you to try to implement them to the best of your ability in your own work environment. And I want you to sort of monitor how it makes you feel. A quick note about ergonomics. I do want to be very clear that no ergonomic program can completely prevent or eliminate the risk of injury or illness or strain in the office. My goal here is really to reduce the risk of developing pain and injuries that develop over time. There are definitely personal and genetic factors at play that cannot be addressed by ergonomics, unfortunately. I wish I could. Additionally, I want to encourage you to default to the recommendations of your own personal medical professionals who know you and your unique and special needs. For example, some individuals might have restrictions around movement, and you should definitely listen to your own medical professionals when it comes to those restrictions. So, we know that proper posture is important because it minimizes the stress on our body systems, reduces fatigue, and can minimize pressure on the soft tissues in our body. What I'd love to do now is walk through some best practices to set up your workstation. I would love to invite you to follow along with me as we make these adjustments. We're going to start by looking at a typical seated posture. When I do an ergonomic evaluation, I always start at the floor and work my way up. So I'm going to do the same here. We're going to start at the floor and work our way up with adjustments. So I'd love for you to sit in your seat and think about the first adjustment, which is seat height. The seat height adjustment is typically located on the right side of your chair. We say righty height. We want to adjust the seat height so that your feet are firmly on the floor, your knees are bent to about 90 degrees, and your hips are at or slightly above knee level. We don't want your feet tucked under that seat onto the base of your chair. We'd love for you to have those feet stable on the floor with your knees, again, around 85 to 100 degrees and your upper thighs at a level or slightly downward tilt. So that's proper seat height adjustment. The next adjustment we'd love to look at is seat depth. We want to adjust the depth of your seat so that there are about 2 to 3 inches of clearance between the front edge of the seat and the back of your knees. If you can place a couple of your fingers, 2 or 3 fingers in that gap, that's perfect. This will ensure that your legs are properly supported without impinging blood supply to your lower legs. And this proper seat depth will also ensure that you can sit all the way back in your seat, distribute pressures over your upper thighs, and really utilize your backrest in a proper way. No more sitting on the front edge of their seat. No more perching here. The next adjustment I want you to look at is lumbar support. Your chair should provide lumbar support in both upright and reclined postures. This lumbar adjustment may be a manual adjustment, something that you can touch and feel and move, or it may be completely passive. If you have a manual adjustment, take some time to position that to a point that feels supportive to you. The next adjustment that we're going to look at is recline tension. The recline tension of your chair should be at a level that is high enough to support your back while still allowing for comfortable postures in changing postures between upright and reclined postures. Again, in some chairs, tension recline is manually adjustable, and in other chairs, the tension adjustment is engineered into the mechanism, meaning that no adjustment is needed. The last adjustment we're going to look at the chair is your armrests. We want to adjust your armrest height and width to a position that will support your forearms, allow your shoulders to remain relaxed, and then allow for neutral postures of the wrists during typing and mousing tasks. So a good rule of thumb here is to fold your hands and place them in your lap. This posture of your shoulders is the one that you want to try to maintain. So adjust your armrest height to a position that will allow you to have this relaxed shoulder posture. Next, adjust the width of the armrest so that your upper arms can be as close to your torso as possible. So we've adjusted your chair to a proper position. However, many of us don't just sit in the chair in the middle of the room. We need to pull it up to a workstation. So once you've gotten into a comfortable position, pull that chair up to your table. If there is a mismatch between your chair height and your work surface height, we have 3 different options. The first is to elevate the height of your chair to better coordinate with your table, and then use a footrest to properly support your feet and legs. We don't want your feet dangling. We don't want you to use the base of your chair as a support. So we want you to effectively raise that ground by using a footrest. The second option is to keep your chair height adjusted to the proper position that we previously discussed and use a keyboard tray to effectively lower the workstation to the proper height. The third option is to use a height adjustable table to adjust the work surface to a proper height to coordinate with your chair. All right, now let's think about the things that are on your work surface. Let's start with the keyboard and mouse. Again, the goal here is to keep straight wrist postures and straight forearm postures as much as possible. So I want you to keep your keyboard straight in front of you and maintain neutral wrist and arm postures. Your keyboard should be flat on your work surface, not angled up with keyboard supports. And your mouse should be kept as close to your keyboard as possible. Make sure to not rest your wrists or your forearms on the edge of your work surface. This can really restrict blood flow to your hands and fingers. All right, lastly, we'll talk about monitors. Monitors should allow for healthy neck postures. Your head should be facing straight forward with no tip or tilt of the neck. Align the top of your monitor with your eye level so that your eyes are relaxed and have a slight downward gaze. The proper distance of your monitor really depends on your visual acuity and your own personal preferences. Typically, a good starting spot is to have your monitor about an arm's length away. However, we may need to bring that closer if you have difficulty viewing. Additionally, if you wear multifocal lenses, having your monitor in a lower position may also be advantageous. If you have multiple monitors, I want you to think about how you're using those monitors. Typically, we have one monitor that is our primary monitor. That's where we're doing all of our work, we're typing, we're entering data. And we have a second monitor that we typically use for reference. So we might have our emails on that or our notifications on that. I'd love for you to position your primary monitor right in front of your nose so that you're not continually turning your neck to see that monitor, and have your reference monitor beside it. So the goal is to have primarily a straight neck posture and occasionally looking to that side reference monitor. A note about glare is also important to introduce here. We want to reduce the impact of glare as much as possible by positioning monitors perpendicular to a window. And just like our bodies need to move, our eyes need to move to stay healthy. So we want to think a little bit about eye strain. Now, I want you to try what's called the 20-20-20 rule. Every 20 minutes, look at something that's 20 feet away or more for about 20 seconds. This activity will allow your eyes to move to change lens length after looking at a monitor that's a fixed distance away for extended periods of time. So that's a good home base for seating. I want to talk a little bit next about standing postures. Many of the same principles that we've just discussed for seating postures also apply to standing. When you're standing, adjust your work surface to the appropriate height to support your keyboard so that your arms and shoulders are relaxed, so that your elbows are bent to about 90 degrees or more, and so that your wrists can maintain the straight posture. When you do this, you might need to adjust the height of your monitor. Remember, the top of your monitor should be about eye level with a slight downward gaze of your eyes. Movement is great, and you should feel comfortable shifting your weight between your feet. However, if you find yourself leaning against your work surface or using your chair to put your knee on, this could be a good indication that your body is starting to feel fatigued, and I would encourage you to consider sitting. So that's a good overview of some home-based sitting and standing postures. I want to also emphasize and remind you that movement is important. Some ergonomists are fond of saying, the best posture is your next posture. More movement, the better. Don't sit all day and don't stand all day. If you feel tired or uncomfortable, change positions. Start slow and work up to longer standing durations, and listen to your body. Find a rotation that is comfortable and fits with you and your ability to work. I also want to encourage you to take opportunities to walk around the space or outside if possible. Working is not limited to your individual dedicated workstation. It occurs throughout the floor plan. Moving throughout the office can offer physical benefits and have positive effects on concentration and productivity. So thank you for coming along with me as I walk through these ergonomic adjustments. If you want to learn more about ergonomics, I encourage you to listen to the rest of our mini series on ergonomics and to check out our resources on allsteeloffice.com. I wish you a comfortable, healthy, and productive workspace. Thank you so much.
And that brings us to the end of another fascinating episode of Tell Me More. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of design and innovation. If you're hungry for more insights and stories, make sure to subscribe to Tell Me More on your preferred podcast platform. As we sign off, remember that the conversation doesn't end here. Connect with us on social media at AllSteel and share your thoughts, questions, or even your favorite moments from the podcast. We love hearing from our engaged and curious audience. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll continue exploring the design to do more philosophy. Until then, thanks for listening.